Welcome back to another episode. What's Your Story with Mike Lindstrom, my man Scott Leese, co-host, episode number 17 with my guy, Jeremy Beer. Jeremy Beer is a co-founder, executive chairman of a company called AmPhil here in Phoenix, Arizona. They're all over the United States. They consult some of the top nonprofit companies in the world. Very heavily involved, philanthropist himself, author, six-time author, about to be seventh time, working on his next project due out this year. Jeremy was awesome. Sat on the couch, and it's kind of nice to spin it around a little bit. He's a podcaster himself. He has his own podcast called Givers, Doers, and Thinkers. In fact, this year, 2026, the theme that they're going to be focused on his podcast is America, the birthday of 250 years. As you guys know, if you've done your homework on our country, 250 years this year. So bring on people to talk about that in the spirit of the themes. But Givers, Doers, Thinkers, he brings on people on his podcasts that he's encountered not only in the world of philanthropy, leadership, author, all the things that he's done. So he sat on our couch, sat with Scott and I, talked about entrepreneurship, why people give, how he built his business, and got to really know the story behind episode 17 with my guy, Jeremy Beer. Enjoy the show. Oh my goodness. Next episode, Mike Lindstrom, Scott Leese, my co-host, What's Your Story podcast. We have our guest, Phoenician entrepreneur, founder, author, good friend, Jeremy Beer. Jeremy has done a lot of things here in the Valley, but we're going to hear a lot about his background, how he built his company, the things he likes to do in his free time, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, the psychology of philanthropy and giving. We were actually doing our homework on the break on getting some of the psychologies of influence and why people make decisions the way they do. So I think of Jeremy like I would call him professorial would be his style. So I'm really excited to hear his professor.
Yeah, he dresses the part.
To say I have the jacket. And
we want to get him a pipe.
He came in character. You got like a cob pipe.
We got to give him a pipe or a cigar or something.
Yeah.
So without further ado, we always start off each of our podcasts with the question is, what's your story? You can take us wherever you want to go. So first of all, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
My honor to be here, guys.
What's your story?
Well, my story is I wanted to be a professor. I have a professorial style because I guess that's what I was wanted to be and intended to be, but it didn't turn out that way. And so the story is of an unintended journey that was one I never would have designed for myself, but that ended up delivering more in so many ways than I ever would have had if I had kind of picked it out myself. So I'm born and raised in rural Indiana, went to Indiana University on the 5-year plan. Had no idea what I wanted to do. Thought I would go to law school, and then somebody, one of my professors said to me, "Have you ever considered graduate school?" I said, "I don't know what's that. I don't know what that is." Get a PhD, and it's like, that's interesting. I really enjoyed doing research. I was just starting to kind of take school seriously, and I said, "I don't have any way to pay for that." And he told me, well, they pay you to go to graduate school. They cover your tuition. You get $1,400 a month typically to be a teaching assistant. And I was like, riches beyond the dreams of avarice. Like, that's unbelievable. So I'm like, okay, I'm all in. And this was in psychology, which I didn't know a whole lot about. But so I went to grad school at the University of Texas at Austin, as we were speaking earlier. It's back in 95. And you'll be happy to know that even in 1995, people were talking about how Austin was already ruined. It didn't just happen in the 20s.
That's good. That means it's not my fault.
My professor, my mentor, took me up to the St. Edward's University of the Hill there, looking down. I was like, boy, so you should have been here in the 70s. It was a fantastic place. So,
wow.
Anyway, and I was in clinical psychology, which is what I had applied for because they said that's kind of the hardest kind of area of psychology to get into. And if you need to pivot out of that, you can. And it turned out I did need to pivot out of that because they throw you right in clinical psychology in grad school. Like, you're meeting with real people with real problems right away, which is, let's face it, it's a questionable pedagogical practice. And so I was terrible at that. My whole goal was always just to keep the conversation light. And that's not what you're looking to do as a clinician. You're not supposed to run away from the problems. You're supposed to lean into the problems. So I went to a different area, but I was very focused on becoming a professor, except that it turned out I hated the discipline of psychology. I absolutely hated it as it was taught in academia anyway. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So then I, once again, didn't know what I was going to do. I ended up backpacking around Europe for a few months. It was about when I was running out of money. I got a job offer to come work for a publishing division of a nonprofit organization in Wilmington, Delaware. And I got into book publishing that way, which very much fit with who I am and what I liked to do. And I learned a lot about that. But I also got to learn about the nonprofit world while I was there, how it's fueled, how it works, how people raise money, how people run those organizations. At about year 8 or 9, after I'd gotten married to a woman I met there at that workplace, it was clear that sort of like the time was running out there at that nonprofit. I needed to move on. A friend of mine there had the same sort of feeling, and we talked about, well, could we do something together, and well, what would that be? And he had worked his way up through development, which of course is the euphemism for fundraising at nonprofit organizations. There's another PhD. He was in English literature, so neither of us were doing what we were supposed to be doing. And he said, well, we've seen a lot of consultants come through this place. There was a guy on retainer for $10,000 a month, and they didn't do squat. They didn't do anything. This man who was on retainer for $10,000 a month, came in once a month, maybe advised. He didn't execute. He didn't really do. And this was 17, 18 years ago. I mean, it was like a lot of money to not do anything. And so our big insight was we could do better work for less money. It looked like to us that the kind of consultants who were working in the nonprofit sector, especially our little part of the nonprofit sector, just weren't all that impressive. So we thought maybe we could do better, even though we had no idea what we were doing. I mean, really didn't. But the good news is nobody else did either. And so it seemed to us. So we took a chance and started a firm that called American Philanthropic. We grandiosely named it American Philanthropic. Two dudes above Jeff Kane, my co-founder's garage outside Seattle. Kind of hung out a shingle and let it be known to people in our networks that what we were doing, or what we thought we were doing, and they let us know then what we were really going to be doing. Well, we need help with this. We need help with that. Do you do strategic planning? Of course, absolutely, we do strategic planning. And then we went to the library. We couldn't even afford to buy books, and checked out books on strategic planning. You do a little reading, and it's not that hard. We could do this, and we charge almost nothing. We talked about we're putting ourselves through graduate school here. One thing led to another, and it's we never had any vision, I think, for anything larger than a company that could pay our mortgages and maybe we have an assistant someday. And it became certainly not some sort of huge business, but we have, now over 100 employees and offices around the country, and work with several hundred nonprofits a year, and some really exciting ones to work with, and figured out over time what the heck it is that we do. Still figuring that out, I guess. But yeah.
Well, so that first contract, if I remember right, because we've interviewed each other before on a podcast last year. It's been almost a year, you and I. $3,000 was your first deal.
Yeah, that was the strategic planning deal. $3,000. Today we charge over $100, I think, to do a real strategic plan with an organization. Of course, it would take a lot of work, and we would know more of what we were doing. But yeah, $3,000. Yeah.
So Professor One Vein, entrepreneur here. Yeah. So reconcile that for me a little bit. When did you say? I know this is not necessarily the route I want to go, but it's a big jump to go from academia to taking risks, starting a company. Talk to us about that, because that's not an easy diversion, I would think.
Yeah, no, it's not. I certainly, I flatter myself I'm a little bit more competent than most professors would be, in certain ways from a business standpoint. But it was really hard. Actually, it was something I fought for a long time. I didn't think about myself. I never have actually thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I've never thought of myself in that way. What I did like, though, was here's a challenge, here's a problem, doing research and trying to figure out how to best address it, helping somebody else figure out how to overcome that challenge. That kind of I framed it as a research problem, that I'm going to help figure out what the answer is. And that's just like academic research, right? And so that way, it did scratch that itch to some extent. And then you're teaching. Just like you would as a professor, you're teaching the client, and you're trying to meet them where they are. What are their fears? What can I give them to help them overcome that, or help move their mindset to where it needs to be? Although that sounds a little bit more didactic. I mean, generally, you're kind of exploring the problem together. That's a little bit more, a graduate seminar than it is an undergraduate sort of lecture. But yeah, it was a big challenge. It's one that it was hard to reconcile myself to for a very long time.
Why is that though? We talk in our world as coaches, sales guys, consultants, that a lot of people couch their sales. They're like, oh, you're a salesman. Like, no, I'm not a salesman. I'm a consultant. Right. So in your mind, it's some kind of limiting belief that you might have around on our side. Was it the same kind of thing? It's like, whoa, I'm not up for the profit. I'm not in for the money.
Correct.
I have this philanthropic heart. What was that part of your limiting belief?
It wasn't even philanthropic heart. I can't even say that about myself.
What was it then?
That's too nice. I had like you said, you hit it spot on, the professorial heart, which is a little bit more selfish, right? It's about living in the world of abstractions. You're right, though. It was a kind of snobbish, I definitely had a kind of snobbish, kind of condescension toward the world of business, this filthy lucre, money. So you have to overcome. That was one great thing that happened to me through all this. Among the many ways in which I was sort of stretched personally, spiritually, intellectually, was like overcoming that kind of snobbishness. That was just ridiculous. That many sort of academic types will cultivate. It's just ridiculous. It's why they become comical figures, right? It's why my wife often turns to me and says, "I'm so glad you're not a professor," because it does something about that world inspires that kind of snobbishness. And when you get into business, and you kind of, as I got into it, you learn that no, this is hard. You have to use this is a hard brain work. It's hard people work. It's hard work, sort of in the social world that transcends a lot of what you'd be asked to do as just a professor or as an academic. That uses more of you, and it uses all of you that would be used as a professor. You're a teacher and a researcher, but much, much more. If that makes sense. Yep. And that's something I came to learn. It was a good thing to learn.
Yeah. So biggest challenge in the early days. If you had to think of one peak moment in the early days of building the business where you can go, okay, the first 5 years, you can identify one peak moment that was challenging.
A peak moment that was a peak challenge?
Yeah, from the early days, of building the business.
Yeah, it's just that moment when you jump into really hiring people, I guess. That's off the top of my head. Everything was very gradual in terms of figuring out what is it we do? What are our products? What are our services? How are we talking about ourselves? What is this world of philanthropic consulting or fundraising services? That was just step by step by step. But the sort of a leap you make, of course, as any entrepreneur or business person knows, is when you really hire, and I don't just mean like the first person, but like now we're going to go to 5, or now we're going to go to 10. Holy crap, because you're still in that level where it's like, if this person goes away, this client goes away, and that client goes away at the same time, we're screwed.
You're sunk.
You're sunk, right? And so that takes it's a leap of faith. Everybody knows, and you have to know that you're not really sunk. You'd have to unfortunately lay a couple of people off and regroup or whatever it might be. We never had any investment other than our own, which was nothing, right? We got contracts from our employer when we left there, and we lived on those, and then we just banked our first $3,000 or $10,000 here and there. We had zero outside investment, zero debt. So it was all self-financed, which in retrospect, probably may not have been the smartest thing in terms of how fast it allowed us to grow or how fast it didn't allow us to grow. But that was something that was, first of all, we had no idea what we were doing. We had not trained a business at all. So, we didn't have a safety net. And so hiring people, I just remember, that's the thing with keeping me up at night. Like, crap, these people are counting on me, on us to pay their mortgages and feed their families. And, it's a scary place to be.
I think that hiring moment that is scary is when you expand outside of somebody you already know and trust.
Right.
Like if I was going to start a business right now from scratch, okay, I can ask Mike to see if he's involved. I can ask Jeremy if he's involved. But at some point, you run out of people that you're close with who might be able to work. And that, I think, is always that scary moment where you have to hire that first person from outside of your direct network. And it's just like, okay, I trust your resume, I trust your references or whatever. That's a scary.
And it's exactly right. And that happened to us probably around 50 or 60. Like I feel like we were able to go.
That's much farther than most people.
Yeah, we were able to go pretty far.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking before we started recording here. How the future is only being networked is going to get you a job somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely the case for us. We weren't looking at anybody that didn't come highly recommended by somebody we knew, whether inside the company or outside the company. In part because we were very missional. We had a very particular mission, a particular set of sort of philosophy of the world that we wanted people to share and really believe in. But also partly because for whatever reason, we had a good culture right away as we were growing. We had a really good culture. And I don't take any credit for that. It's just, however that happened. And what was scary about bringing in people that finally we didn't know or that nobody knew really well was we were really worried about the culture that we saw as really getting us through challenges and just made it very low drama. To this day, it still is a super low drama, low friction kind of workplace or community of people working together. So yeah, that was scary. Yeah. And I will say, once we went outside the network, made our first 5 hires that we did like that, half of them didn't work out. Yeah. 2 or 3 didn't work out. And so we still to this day don't often hire people that we don't know.
It's scary. It feels like much more of a risk.
It is. And I think it is.
Yeah.
It is.
In my experience in the nonprofit world, there's a lot of like sort of romanticized sacred sort of beliefs about you have to be mission driven or you have to be this, that, and the other. Are there any of those sort of sacred beliefs in the nonprofit world that you have found to just be totally false? Yeah. But still exist, like they're still prevalent, but you're out there talking to all these nonprofits and you're like, okay, I know you all have this belief, wrong.
Right.
Do you have an example
there's a ton. There's a lot. I'll give you a couple. So one is a belief that the best nonprofits are the ones who have the lowest so-called overhead ratio. Overhead ratio refers to not quite like a for-profit business where we don't usually use that term in the for-profit world, but if we did, we might mean something like your back office sort of expenses, right? This means everything that isn't program, every dollar that isn't spent on your program, what it is you do, whether it's the homelessness prevention or whatever it might be, whether it's fundraising, marketing, advertising, back office, utilities, rent, everything, that's all overhead. Right. For a long time, the belief was, and still is in many quarters, that the best nonprofits have the lowest overhead ratio. They crow about it and brag about it. Right. Like 97 cents of every dollar you give to us goes directly to the program. That's a really it's when you it sounds good, and God bless people who are thinking that way, but that's a limiting belief. That's not necessarily good.
Is it a vanity metric?
It's not just a vanity metric. It's supposed to tell people that you're not fraudulent.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of concern in the nonprofit world about giving to things that aren't really doing what they should be doing or say they're doing, or they're wasting money.
I give $100 and $2 goes to the cause and 98 goes to
exactly. And that would be a problem. Yeah. I mean, there's a limit to the. But what if a nonprofit? Okay, I can keep 500 people from becoming 500 families from becoming homeless next year. I've run the math. If I have an overhead ratio of 10%, but if I spend even more on fundraising and marketing, advertising, whatever, salaries, things like that, to scale up what we're doing and invite more supporters in, we could keep 2,000 families off the streets. But then my overhead ratio goes up to 20%. Which would you rather have? The group that's keeping 2,000 families off the streets or the one that's keeping 500 off the streets? Right. I'll take the 2,000. I don't care if they're spending 20 cents on every dollar on overhead. Right? So that's one limiting belief that just permeates the sector. There's lots of pushback on it and has been for years now. But the idea that investing in your own growth and your own success is bad, and then donors share that belief sometimes too. That like they don't want you to keep the lights on for some reason. They don't want you to invest in the best people. They'd rather you have mediocre people. I mean, they don't ever put it that way, but that's the implication when you make the overhead ratio your sort of top metric. So that'd be one thing we see and that we preach against a lot. Like, don't look at that. It's hard. It is admittedly very hard to from a distance in an abstract way, just look at numbers and find out what nonprofit is doing the best work. But that's just sort of the nature of the game. We don't have a stock market here.
Yeah.
We're not just maximizing shareholder value.
I think what's interesting about what you do in that regard is the psychology piece, which ties back to where you first started your journey back in school.
Yeah.
Because in the discussions we've had, we talk about Christian Smith, Notre Dame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff that you from your book. I mean, we'll get to your book and everything here in a bit. But there's a lot of psychology in the organization and how you're coaching. You're coaching people. I mean, you're a consultant, you do everything at AmPhil, but there is a lot of psychology behind this stuff. And I think a lot of people don't know that. Can you speak to some of that psychology?
Yeah, it connects to the last question too. So another thing people think, and it's a thing that people think about themselves too, is that donors, what most motivates givers, the thing they're most motivated by, the thing they most want is to have their dollar be the most impactful it can possibly be, to be the most effective it can possibly be. And that sounds like, who could argue with that? That sounds, of course, that must be the case. But it's not. It's not. That isn't, you will raise money, you will raise less money if I come to Mike. I never really met Mike. We barely know each other, but I can show him my numbers. Mike, I keep 2,000 families off the street. It was really impactful. As you can see, here are the numbers. Or if I've taken the time to get to know Mike and I know, and I can connect what we're doing with something that's central to Mike's identity. And if I also make Mike believe that he belongs to a team, a community that's attacking a problem together, he won't even care about the numbers.
Just wants to be a part of something.
Yeah, because what we really are motivated most by, and this is the psychology part here, and I stole this from Christian Smith, a sociologist at Notre Dame, of the basic human motivations like sex, food, shelter. We're highly motivated to seek these things out. Two of them are, we're motivated to affirm an identity over and over, to affirm who we are. This is who I am, this is who I am. And we're motivated to belong to something larger than ourselves. And I think the most effective nonprofit organizations, the most effective leaders in those organizations, the most effective fundraisers, that's what they get to. Everything they do is aimed at providing that sense of belonging and also speaking to your identity and connecting your identity with what we do with our identity, if that makes sense. So
well, give us some examples, whether AmPhil works with them or not. We can always look at corporate America and say, this company nails marketing. They do a job at branding. In this space, who does a really good job of that?
I would say just generally look at colleges and universities. Often people will wonder there's two sorts of nonprofit institutions that tend to have the most success in fundraising. I think, just speaking in broad strokes, one would be higher ed, colleges and universities. The other would be hospitals and healthcare institutions. But just think of colleges and universities. Arguably, no part of the nonprofit sector needs money less than colleges and universities. They have a revenue model, and you got any kids who've gone to college?
About to.
They charge a little bit of money.
It's not cheap.
It's gone up like crazy. At the same time, their endowments have gone done incredibly well, right? And yet, they raise more money, generally speaking, than anyone. Now, why is that? It's a great example of why, we're not giving in this, we're not rational robots out there giving where our dollars do the most good. It's because they can speak to identity so strongly. Your kid's going there. It's a big part of your life. Maybe you went there and it shaped you.
Yeah.
It made you who you are. These are your people. You follow the team on Saturday. What's that? Status. And then, there's some of that too, right? Yeah. Well, it's also to be associated with Notre Dame. Yeah, it does also have a bit of status. And that's who I am. I'm the kind of person who's associated with Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. I'm the kind of person who gets the president knows at Notre Dame or wherever the place might be, right? And so I think they have a leg up when it comes to both identity and belonging. Those places shape identity and they confer identity. And they obviously, there's this built-in community. You spend 4 years, you feel a sense of belonging with your alma mater, typically, for most people, right? So to me, that's kind of the proof case. That's why that works. Even though, again, they need our money less than almost anyone else. And it's hard for a number of my human services organization type clients, right? I mean, You can't. It's there. If you're running a soup kitchen in a homeless shelter, people aren't paying for it. You got to raise every dollar. But most of your giving kind of type, it's called the giving class people, don't have firsthand experience with that kind of thing. They may not have family members who have firsthand experience. How you create that sense of belonging for that organization, that's a challenge. That makes our work fun. Trying to figure that out.
How do you inform people or advise people on when not to give? Everything is so focused on you should give for these following reasons. Yeah. What about the opposite of that? Is like, I can't say yes to everything.
No, you can't.
Right?
You can't.
I'll go broke.
Right.
Right.
You can't. But I would be, I would say, I'll flip it to help you decide what not to give to. Is what are you called to give to? And that's a process you need to go through yourself. Like, what am I? Maybe what am I passionate about? What do I care about? What do I feel called to really give to and support? What is there an organization or at least an area that I should be giving back to, sort of in justice for what I've been given? Maybe somebody helped you off the streets at one time, for instance, and now you're doing well or whatever. St. Vincent de Paul has stories like this where people's families were really helped by St. Vincent de Paul, and now they're doing, they're fine, and they feel, hey, I sort of almost like almost a matter of justice to give back to that. So that's one way of tackling that. Mm-hmm. And then you can say, okay, these other things are great, but I'm going to focus my giving on this. And then generally, I would say maybe it's not a hard not give to, but I would think twice about giving to things or organizations where you can't see the results of your gift firsthand. And that's a challenge for any overseas sort of nonprofits, but it's a rightful challenge, I think. I think if you can see the results, you can be more sure that your money's being used well, but also that probably means that you're giving to something that actually is
getting something done.
Yeah, getting something done, but also part of your community too. I think there's an order of charity. St. Thomas. I'll be the first person to quote St. Thomas Aquinas probably here in these podcasts, right? But there's an order of charity, and it starts with the people closest to you and kind of radiates out from there. And so I would if something's too far from you, or the people that you know, or the things you know, that may not be the thing you're called to give to, no matter how great a thing it is.
That's good.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Tell us about the inspiration for the book, because the book, you got to talk about your writing too, how you write, what do you do, what's your process, but what was the moment when you said, I got to write this book?
So the book you're talking about is called The Quest for Belonging, and it's about the psychology of giving. And it was about, we've been pushing back in our industry for a while against, there is a school of thought that makes an ethical case for you are ethically obligated to give your money where it will do the most good for the most people. So if you know anything about philosophy, that's essentially a utilitarian philosophy. And the school of thought's called effective altruism, and it's kind of broader than that. And we whatever you think of that, as a fundraiser, we were seeing clients like kind of speaking that language to people as if people were sort of working that rationally as givers. And it doesn't work. It'll work with some people, but even the people it does work with, like usually working with them for other reasons. I'll give you an example of that. Like I know a philanthropist who he wouldn't think of himself necessarily as an effective altruist, but he's very his identity is very tied up in being very rational about his giving. We're going to see a lot of impact. Who's using his money the best? That's who's going to get his money. But in reality, when you look at his giving, it's heavily slanted toward the people who have made him feel the strongest sense of belonging and really appeal to his identity very highly, including like an alma mater again, right, where his money is absolutely not needed. And it's not doing the most good, but it's like he just feels such a bond there. And so I think that's the case for a lot of givers. So as advice for fundraisers, whatever you might think of this effective altruism thing as an ethical school of thought, it's terrible advice for fundraisers. So we wanted to write something that got more at the truth. And actually, I draw on not just Christian Smith, but Jonathan Haidt, who some of the listeners, viewers might know of, right? The Anxious Generation is the bestseller that he has out right now. But before that, he had a book called The Righteous Mind, among other books. And it's really good at talking about how ex post facto, we rationalize the decisions we make after our emotions or affective nature has already made those decisions for us, basically. And not that that is always or necessarily the case, but that's generally the human case. We feel something, we're attracted to it, and then we invent reasons for why we're doing what we're doing. Not the other way around. Yeah. And I thought that's way better advice for fundraisers, generally speaking. So I kind of brought in some Jonathan Haidt, Christian Smith, and others to kind of try to devise a framework for nonprofit leaders and fundraisers that comported more closely to how humans really are, not as we might wish them to be. If that makes sense.
I like the framework you have on your show of givers, doers, thinkers.
Yeah.
I believe is what it is.
Yeah.
And I started trying to think about, which bucket would certain people kind of fall into. And I think everybody, maybe not everybody, a lot of people would like to think they fall into all three of those buckets.
Yeah.
I'm a giver.
Yeah.
I'm a doer. And I'm a thinker. And then I started thinking, which one of those am I least aligned with? So my question to you would be, which one of those three are you least aligned with out of those three?
Yeah. It's easier for me to think than to do the other things, right?
So not thinker then, he's aligned with that one.
Yeah. Try,
giver, doer.
Well, in terms of like in the nonprofit sector, in terms of like, I would way rather help you think about what you're doing, give to what you're doing, than to serve. Service is hard for me.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Going down to the soup kitchen, going to the homeless shelter. And I've got plenty of friends who run nonprofits who need volunteers, and I don't do it.
Yeah.
That's hard for me.
Yeah.
Which means it's a thing that I should be doing more of.
Yeah. I would say to throw myself under the bus now so he doesn't feel alone. Okay. I probably spend not enough time thinking about it. If you and I were having a chat and you like ask for help or something sparked to me, I would go do the thing right now. My problem is when I'm out in the world, I'm out of sight, out of mind. I don't spend enough time thinking about, I would say, the right kinds of things that have the right cause necessarily behind them.
Yeah.
Is that, he's probably the norm, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the norm. Yeah.
I'm the
norm.
I
wouldn't feel bad about that at all. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think so. Because it's just not something we, when are you ever called to do that by anybody in your life? To like really kind of sit back and think about your giving. And when do you even ever given a framework for how to think about your giving?
Certainly, in my experience at least, I've never been given a framework. It's not something we studied. It's not something from my family that was ever a part. No one was ever in a position to, be philanthropic or anything like that. Right. So to me, it's like, I didn't even ever have a moment to think about that until I hit certain milestones or benchmarks or whatever. Or meet certain people now because I'm at this particular place. I'm like, oh, Jeremy knows all about this world. Maybe I should spend some time thinking and learning about this particular world.
And the thing is, that's I think it's the norm. But it's one of the things that the more you start, not just to think about it, but to start to be a giver, to get kind of an engaged giver, I would say, to organizations, like it's the most rewarding thing. It's so rewarding. And for many people, it becomes like almost an addiction,
sure.
Because in a good way, it's like, it's just the gratification of knowing that all you've been given and blessed with, that you're able to turn around and give some of that back to make massive differences in people's lives or in your community is it's so gratifying. You just want to keep doing it.
Yeah. I've always been impressed by the person, and this is not just philanthropy. It's faith too. Somebody's church is the word all in. You go we go to a lot of events like breakfasts or signature events, and you'll meet people up there. I was at one with MS Society. My friend Chris runs. He's the director there, and there's people in that room that have been directly affected themselves, their families. And I'm there to support Chris, and he's my friend, and he helps us with ambassadors, for example, with Jerry. And you're sitting there, I'm sitting at this table, and I'm like, this guy, he's never been directly affected. Like he's never had it. He has no one in his family. This guy's all in. I mean, you're talking about addiction. I can see that. And when I meet people like that in faith, if I go to mass on Sunday, there's people have never missed church. They're in that same spot every Sunday, 9:00 at St. Thomas or whatever. They are all in on things. And I'm just blown away when I meet people like that. And there's a certain, I don't know if it's a predisposition, a genetic piece, or it's just people are like that. How often do you meet people that are in that small bucket of all in? All in.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, being all in is really hard. But what being all in means in the way you mean it, I think, is being people who are really super advanced and self-emptying.
Wow.
And it's very, very hard to be. It takes a lot of spiritual discipline to become an advanced self-emptier and self-denier. Someone who really puts others before yourself, and not in an unhealthy way, but I mean in a healthy way, if that makes sense. Yeah. That's the hardest thing in the world. That's the thing we're, in our tradition, we're called to do more than anything else. And so it's rare. It's rare. But the great thing about philanthropy or giving, I would say charity is the word I prefer to use. It helps. It is a way to practice that discipline. It is a way to be self-emptying. I think people often ask, how much should you give? And I don't believe in magic numbers, but somebody, I think it was C.S. Lewis, or somebody, it's been attributed to him. I don't know if he really said it. Maybe it was Gerard Manley Hopkins. Give until it pinches. Just give until it pinches.
If you feel squeezed,
if you don't feel it at all, that's fine, but that's not helping you very much. It might be helping the world, but giving is also about helping yourself in this kind of way, right? Helping you advance as a person. And so if you give till it pinches, then now you hit a nerve.
It's good.
That's
I like that. That quote.
Yeah,
that's powerful.
Do you think you have to have a little bit of a irrational belief that you can make an impact? I tend to be somebody who's maybe a little more jaded, skeptical or whatever.
Yeah.
And I wonder if people who are in that field and in that world, part of them is like irrationally optimistic, irrationally delusional about the impact they can make. Yeah. And I mean that in a positive way. Right.
Whether it's irrational or not would be an interesting, I don't know, but certainly I see that if people who tend to be more skeptical are less quick to jump in that giving pool than people who tend to be more a believer, a natural believer, so to speak. Whether it's irrational or not is an interesting question. I think there is something to it, though. I think being a little bit, maybe call it non-rational in your giving is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
There's a bit of an act of faith here. I wouldn't say it's irrational, but I would say it's non-rational.
Yeah. It's almost like being too rational is limiting.
Yeah, it can be.
And also
you can be too skeptical, you know. If I get you, I mean you as a type, in front of the right nonprofit leader on the right tour or the right day, you guys see and be touched and see like, oh, no, my whatever, $1,000 here, $500 here, $10,000 here, actually it does make a difference. Like this person for a month is here for $500 eating, and the stories they're able to tell you. What I would most recommend to people is to go take some tours and volunteer. Like, there's a whole other world out there that philanthropy fuels, and only philanthropy can fuel. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your writing process. I know when you stepped away from the organization as a CEO the last couple of years. We're coming up on 2 years.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? 2 years.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I always remember because it's holiday season and we have the Christmas party coming up. Yeah. That's when I first met your new CEO, Chris, who's amazing. So coming up on 2 years, you took a sabbatical, which I've never seen. I've coached a lot of CEOs who've I've never seen just literally say, okay, Chris, you're the new CEO. I'm going to be stepping away for a period of time. That means no email, no nothing. So good luck. Let's see how this transition goes. And
I had no idea what was happening.
And you did it. And you did amazing. Chris did amazing too, to his credit. So I know you like to get away and travel and see things and go be with yourself, by yourself, as I call it. In your writing, how do you write a book? What's your process when you go from concept to the book?
So there's a couple of different kinds of books that I write. There's one that's kind of the philanthropy business books, and those tend to be group efforts because we really view them as, even though my name's on them, like it's really AmPhil putting books out there. And for that, I'm working together with others to like outline what are we doing here, to conduct interviews with people. Even if the drafting might be a group effort, and then I take over at some point and kind of take it from there. for books I write for fun, which have nothing to do with philanthropy, but that scratch, again, back to the professorial side. I just stuff I like to do. I like to write biography, do biographical kind of work. It's a lot of research, archival research. Oftentimes, it takes, gotta have a library membership to do this kind of research I'm doing. Taking notes, lots of notes. And then eventually it just starts to well up inside me that I'm ready to write. At least snippets of text start to come to me, or like, oh, I know where I would take this, just write. And then after a while, then I'm like, okay, so like there's three phases: research, then there's like stuff starts to well up, and then there's like, I just have to write now with what I have, no more research. And it's like organizing things. And typically I'll just make myself, every morning I usually try to write I'll work on a book for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And then I'll take a week every 8 weeks or so. I'll try to clear as much of it as I can of my schedule and just work that week on a particular book project. So you have to have chunks of time to really write. Yeah.
You feel like you got to get into a rhythm and flow with it?
Yes, for the most part. Although I've learned again, though, if you could just do an hour and a half every morning, you can make progress. You'll find you wrote 300 words a day, 500 words, 1,000 words, or you read some key stuff and got some good notes ready to go. That does add up over time.
It's like there's old sort of journalism and kind of advice that says, oh, you want to be a writer? What's the best way to be a writer? Just write something every day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The other little trick too is stop. One thing I just learned a few years ago, which is really good psychological trick, is your stopping point should never be like the end of a thought or even maybe the end of a paragraph. Like in the middle, right when you're in the middle, that's when you should stop, because your brain will keep working.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, your brain will keep working and will draw you back. You'll want to get back. You can almost not wait to get back
to finish it.
Right. Whereas if you stop at a regular stopping point, you're like, no, I got to kind of think of the next thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
that was a good trick somebody taught me.
Who popularized that?
I don't know.
I've that too.
I don't know.
I've always done that.
Take it.
It's not.
It's so true though.
It's really good advice.
It gets you thinking about things in the.
But yeah, you're right. You just have to write. If you
just write something every day.
Yeah. Don't let the page be blank for very long.
Yeah. So, things outside of work, interests. I know you like baseball. You like to travel. Tell us a little bit what are non-work, what do you tell us about that side of Jeremy?
He has no non-work interests. I write. I mean, really, that writing work, that's not work to me. My own writing, as I call it. That's really my main hobby, if there is one. I do like minor league baseball in particular. I love going around to minor league. My goal would be to see every minor league baseball stadium in America.
That's a lot of stadiums.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've only been like 50 or so. So I've got like 150 to go, somewhere between 100 and 150. I can't remember exactly. The number, of course, shifts every year. But
you could marry those two passions, by the way, and write all about minor league baseball and this.
Believe me,
in a van,
it's on the drawing board.
Country.
It's on the drawing board.
I would read that.
Yeah.
I would read that.
Yeah. I'm already romanticizing the idea in my head.
It's a great way to see America. And my wife likes to do it too, because we've done road trips on this before. And of course, you're going to the games at night typically. So during the day, you're driving one place to another, and there's usually time to stop and see something.
Yeah, you go explore the town or city, wherever you are. Yeah.
Exactly. Or there'll be the biggest ball of twine along the way or whatever.
The Corn Palace.
Yeah, the Corn Palace.
Sioux Falls.
Like a thermometer and Baker or whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Something like
that kind of stuff, stuff we like to see. So, yeah, I enjoy that. We travel a lot, my wife and I too. But the main writing is the main other thing.
Yeah. I love that you have that belief. So do I. Writing to me is not work, even though maybe there's.
If it's something I want to write, if it's something you commission me to write,
a PowerPoint, a spreadsheet, completely different.
It's not.
No, a deck is definitely in the low end of that. How has AI, ChatGPT, or any of that affected your writing? Do you use it? If you do use it, how do you use it?
Yeah. So at AmPhil, of course, we make use of not ChatGPT. Typically, we have some preferred. We're in a closed environment, put it that way, with particular bots, whatever, that seem to work. A group of bots seem to work well for people, and it's helpful to people to get some drafts done, and that kind of thing. I've never used it in my own writing, and
Knock on wood.
Never will, if possible. I'd say if it's for work, we're all trying to turn out the best product for the client to meet the need. No one's name is on it, but my name is on what I write, and I want that to be my thoughts. So I've never used it, and I hope not to. We'll see how that goes. It's a challenging thing to navigate. We know it's not perfect. We know there's AI will lie to you. It'll make stuff up. It'll, missummarize things. Sometimes, not always. So you always have to do your own fact check and so forth. But I worry about, even for our company, and I don't know if this will make any difference in the end. Maybe it won't matter. But I worry about developing pseudo competencies rather than real competencies, and that sort of AI being sort of a prosthetic. People will look like they can write, but they can't really write.
Mm-hmm.
Or they look like they can think, and they can't really think. They've outsourced it to the bot. Whatever competencies and skills we don't use atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my worry about if we leaning too hard into the AI side of this, is that when called on, and maybe in the future world we will never be called on. I don't know how this is going to go, but called on to think for yourself, to write. So like if you were called to, today, if you're under 30 and you were called to make your way out, with a map from a wilderness area,
good luck.
Could you do it? Yeah, good luck. Exactly. Because those skills, our geospatial skills, have atrophied. We're the dumbest geospatial people ever to live, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Not calling these those skills. So that's my concern with it. Not that you asked, but I don't want to lean out myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. There was a study that was just last year. They took two groups. One had completely relied on ChatGPT for a 30-day period, and the other one did not. Yeah. And they looked at the brainwave activity. It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right there in the scans. Yeah. You can see what part of the brain's firing and what's not firing. So here's a quote, and I want to get to the podcast too. I want to make sure we talk about the podcast. So you got to finish this quote. The heart rules. What's the end?
The heart rules.
When we talk about this, the heart rules. This
is a pop.
No, it's not. No, the heart. We're talking about in giving, right? In philosophy, the heart rules.
Yeah.
And what there's a part of validation. We were talking about this before, and it's the logic in the heart, right? We talked about the heart rules, but there's always something that happens after the fact. So the correct quote.
Sorry,
no, the heart rules and the brain validates the decision.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
that's what I was talking about before.
I know it's yours, but I'm saying talk to me about that, because bring that to life, because a lot of people may hear that and they're like, wait a minute. That kind of makes sense. No, I don't agree with that. But if you let that sit.
If you're you guys are speakers, you guys are, you've been in sales, even though no one's a salesman. We all partner with you to develop the best solution. Do you just go up there and when you're trying to persuade an audience, do you go just armed with a bunch of numbers and no stories? No appeal to emotion?
Very, very rarely.
Facts tell stories. So
it would be a very small percentage of the population that have to be targeting.
Yeah.
That don't need or want that.
Yeah. And this quote may not be true for everyone. It is true for the vast majority. Of humanity.
I think it's.
And I just think it's to me. To say it is to know that it's true.
How's that not 100%?
Well, I've met some very special chief security officers and chief technology officers that don't rely on emotion.
Yeah, there's
almost entirely.
It's the validation piece at the end. It's the brain validates the decision. This is what you said. Like
the brain validates it. So it's not that the heart makes the. There's a kind of a fail. If you're working correctly as a human being, the brain's at least a fail safe on what your heart is leading you to. So it's not like the brain is left out entirely. It is not the slave of the emotions or of the heart, but we would be foolish to think that we are not generally led toward things by our emotions, our feelings, our affective nature. And that's why sometimes our brain has to get involved. You're led toward, I was going to give an example I shouldn't give on air, but you'd be led to make a foolish moral decision by your feelings, right? But if you're working correctly, if you developed appropriately as a person, your brain can step in and say, that would be a dumb thing to do.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
It overrides.
You can override
the
it.
dumb decision.
This is what we were talking about on the break. I know what he's thinking.
I know exactly what he's talking about too. We know.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
We're vibing, man. We're vibing.
Yeah.
All right, podcast. I'm really excited because, again, flashing back a year ago, we were talking about themes for the next year, which is now a full 2025 we're coming through. So talk
I wish I
about
had as cool a podcast setup as you guys have. It's unbelievable.
I
can see the background. Look at that.
Hey, we got to give shout out to Patrick Cantor. He's our big producer. He's like Oz in the back. He never comes
He's
in.
behind the curtain.
Patrick's the producer.
Old man.
But the podcast was
my little podcast. It's called Givers, Doers, and Thinkers, and been doing it for a few years. And what I discovered, you probably discovered too, is like, especially in the early days. When I started 7-8 years ago or so, it's like anybody will come on your podcast. Didn't matter how big they were. Jonathan Haidt came on my podcast. I was nobody. And,
you did? What year was that?
Yeah, like 6-7 years ago. It's pre-COVID.
Do you have the clip? Do you still have it?
I assume it's still there on. You can find it online.
We got to repurpose that. His book just came out. By the way, I don't know if you know this. So Bob Ryan, who's the president of Brophy, where our kids go to school, had sent an email out to all parents at our kids' high school, put a little blurb in there and said, you guys need to read this book. Of course, when Bob Ryan tells you should read the book, you read the book. I had not read it. I ordered it that minute.
The Anxious Generation.
And I'm reading it right now. I've already gone through it. And it's just, I'm speaking to it right now, especially with our nonprofit ambassadors, because it plays right into the resiliency theme.
Yep.
But it's affected Monica and I's discussions with our boys who are now 17 and 14. He's got teenager boys as well, and we've been talking about that today. That book is powerful.
Yeah.
But so I didn't know you had him on.
Yeah, I'm the one who made him today.
You broke him.
You broke him. That's great.
We've worked with his nonprofit, Heterodox Academy, in the past. We're the client. That was an honor. So no, but the podcast is Givers, Doers, and Thinkers, but meaning mainly philanthropists, people who think about civil society and philanthropy, and then people who are in the trenches doing the work. It's a mix. And the last coming up, we're now releasing episodes right now with doers, people who are doing the most interesting things to me that I can find in civil society right now. People working on the technology addiction issues or many other things. And then next spring, we'll be talking to the most interesting givers. Actually, the hardest category to find. You can find interesting thinkers and interesting doers. It's kind of hard to find interesting givers, who people are doing really interesting things with their money and will come on a show to talk
and
about
we'll talk about it.
Yeah. And we have a theme that's coming up.
Yeah, it's all kind of around America 250, the semifinal.
I was in Paris. We were in a meeting last year, and he wasn't trying to trick me either. He was just throwing out a lob. 250. You know what that is, right? Coming up. And I'm like, 250. I don't know. He's like, America, baby. We're talking about the birthday. Yeah. 250.
Yeah,
I'm like trying to do math in my head right now.
No, but I similar to you. I was stumped.
In 1976, the lead up to it was massive. I'm assured by people who really lived it. I was 4.
Yep.
The 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the birth of the country, was huge. And 250 is like is sneaking up on people.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Maybe
next year.
It's so hard to say semi-quincentennial.
That's too big.
Well, I hope with our that's why I want to get this out. I mean, you really got me.
You'll start to see more. I'm starting to see more stuff in the real big world, not just my little stupid little corner of the world. So I think it'll start to show up as the calendar turns in January. At least I hope.
I hope so too. I'd rather look at that than some of the other news we see now.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. All right. So tell us. We always wrap up with a couple quick rapid fire questions, and we'll close out with what you're working on that you're willing to share.
Yeah.
So, book that really influenced you in your life. Could be anything. Book, someone that stands out. What would you say?
Man, there's so many. I'm tempted to give the nerdiest possible answer. I've God, what direction do I want to take this, Mike? I'll say I've been influenced by so many people, but I'll say Wendell Berry. As a way of thinking about our relationship to creation and how we are best to steward that. Yeah. Many people know who Wendell Berry is, right? It's big in the food movement. He's a name that's well known.
Yep.
Yeah, an agrarian. Yeah.
What about quote you live by, a principle, something?
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
by the great philosopher Mike Tyson.
Yeah, that's a great philosopher.
That's the one I'll go with.
You like that one?
Yeah, I do.
I do too. I like
Yeah,
that
it's a
too.
good reminder that plans are only worth what they're worth.
Best movie of all time.
Hoosiers.
Boom.
All
right, you got to ask him the $1 million question. It's your question. You brought it up in prep. Go ahead, ask.
Wow, I want to know if you're taking Indiana or the field this year.
And the emotional hedge strategy that I like to follow would say the field. If I'm putting money down, right?
Yeah, because then you can't lose.
I can't lose.
You either make money or your team wins.
Right. I like can't lose propositions, but I'm all in on Indiana. My wife knows that we're going to every playoff game, no matter what.
Yeah.
And we've cleared our calendars. And as an Indiana football fan, this doesn't come around a whole lot. To say the least.
Flash ever until now.
I'm really excited.
The losingest program in college football history.
Is that right?
Yeah.
As of this season.
Yeah, they no longer have the lowest winning percentage of all time, nor the most losses of all time. So, pretty amazing.
It's a good time to be
there's something about Indiana. The people that are, when they're down to the Final Four or two, the country is going to root for Indiana. Right? It's the middle of the country.
Somebody evil like Georgia or Alabama.
We're all sick of those schools.
Yeah.
Ohio State for sure.
I'm pulling for that for sure.
Thank you for
good luck to you.
That's the most important thing in my life right now.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about that in prep. He asked that question. I love what's asking live. All right. So what things you can brag on? Things you're working on? Books coming up? Anything you're willing to share? This will be coming up.
We're gonna book. Yeah. I mean, it won't be out till next year. Called The Big Bet. And it's about a huge bet that a foundation, actually here in Phoenix, made on a nonprofit and its ability to scale and grow, and how it worked much better than anybody ever had the right to believe, and what lessons we can draw from that.
It's a locally Arizona.
Yeah. It's actually I'll say it's about the Virginia Piper Trust, and it's a huge bet on St. Vincent de Paul, Society of St. Vincent de Paul, 13 years ago now, and how that has ramified into so much growth and so much good done that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
So that's a lot of people. You got to get a lot of good stories. I mean, there's history there.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you the one running point on that, or is that a team effort as well?
Yeah, I'm running point on it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. When do you expect that to come out?
Maybe next summer.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll see.
Are you still have the same publisher that you'll be going with?
That'll probably be with Post Hill.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So Post Hill is who did my book, which was What's Your Story? Questions for the questions for your father book was Post Hill. So we have that in common as well. So any takeaways, anything for our audience? We always call them takeaways, or anything you want to leave behind. We always like to gather the wisdom of our guests.
No, I mean, America is in a place where we need strengthening civil society, and our community social fabric is more important than ever. So just encourage people to get out of the house, don't isolate, and go be engaged somewhere as a giver or as a doer in something that's contributing to the community.
Mm-hmm. Where people find you? Website?
AmPhil.com. AmPhil.com.
AmPhil.com. We'll put that in the free roll as well. So Jeremy Burr, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. We really do. So signing off, Scott, good stuff, huh?
Yeah, I love it.
All right. Mike Lindstrom, Scott Leese, What's Your Story? Another one in the can. Thank you so much for joining us.